In this section of the tutorial, I'm going to be covering editing multiple interviews as opposed to just a single interview clip here. This is one where we've had several interviews shot, and kind of all around the same subject. This is about Salt Lake Community College's film program. We've interviewed some students and some professors. But one thing, I'm not talking necessarily about prepping for those shoots and what questions to ask. Just kind of tell you how this has been shot and then how we're going to go about this. These questions were shot with open-ended answers here. We asked questions to students, and then we said, please repeat the question inside the phrase, so they are standalone questions, so we don't have to have narration to bridge these gaps. And we asked very specific questions to the students that were kind of student-based, and asked them all the same questions, since they were all students, and then asked the professors similar questions, but yet some different questions as well. Based on that, based on these interviews where you have multiple interviews asking similar questions, I'm going to show you how to organize these that will minimize the amount of time that it takes to filter through all these interviews. It's kind of a nice little process here. I'm going to grab one of these interviews. I'm going to grab it and drop it into my timeline here. I'm going to grab my timeline, drag it on my folder, rename my timeline, and call this interviews. So I've got this timeline here that's going to be interviews. I'm going to delete that, and now I'm going to go to so now I've got a nice blank interview timeline here. I'm going to go to my interviews. I'm going to grab all the student ones first. So I would recommend grabbing basically all your interviews, dragging and dropping them into a timeline. Let me grab the other ones. The instructor was me. So I'm going to grab those two, stick them at the end here. And I've got the timeline with all my interviews stuck in the same timeline here. This is basically all the interviews that were done. I'm going to click on my timeline and hit Shift plus to kind of bring these up so I can look at my waveforms. The process that I'm going to be showing you here for editing all these interviews together down into one. See, this is like 23 minutes of interviews. You might have like an hour and a half's worth of interviews or more if you're doing a documentary. But this is a good process for editing down documentaries or kind of industrial commercial style projects that are interview based. So I'm going to zoom up here a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create an all new timeline. I'm going to right click on this interview one, and I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm going to call this one here my template. I'm going to call this template, and I'm going to double click on it. It's got all the footage in it the same way, but I don't need the footage in here. I'm going to select all my footage and delete it. And now I have a template that I'm going to be using to duplicate, because what I'm going to do is take all these interviews and start separating them into categories here. I'm going to use a template to make brand new timelines. Each new timeline will be a new category. So let's listen to the interviews first of all. I'm going to play through this. Let's go, and I can tell where the question happens here. The first question happens here, and then there's an answer.
First of all, tell us your name and how you spell it.
Tell us your name and how you spell it. And I don't need that. I need those for lower thirds later on. So I'm going to skip through this, get to the next question. Here's the next question.
What career path are you interested in after you graduate here?
So what career path are you interested in after you graduate? So I'm going to right now I'm going to eliminate all this footage here. I'm going to hit Q, which cuts and deletes and ripple deletes to the left. Q will do that, and I'm going to play through his interview.
When I first started,
and I can actually grab this whole answer right there. I don't even really have to listen to it because I'm going to listen to it later. And now I'm going to move down here, and I'm going to put an out point. So I've got an in point. I hit O, in point and out point of this section of interview. And I'm going to extract this. I'm going to hit my extract key. Here my shortcut is my parentheses, or one thing to point out is I did not put an in point since there was no in or out points on my timeline. When I hit O, it automatically set an in point at the beginning of the timeline. And I'm going to extract this. I'm going to hit this little key up here, the extract, or you can hit your parenthesis key for the shortcut. Click that, and it extracts it and fills the gap. And now it's waiting for me to paste it somewhere. This is where I'm going to I'm going to go to my template. I'm going to right click on my template, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to rename this one. I'm going to number these as well. I'm going to put 01, and I'm going to say what career after graduation. Hit return, and basically that timeline is named what career after graduation. Double click on it, Control V or Command V on a Mac, and paste it, and I've got one interview in there that is basically this subject. So I'm going to go back to my interviews and continue this process, and I'm going to listen to the next question.
I chose Salt Lake Community College too.
Why did you choose Salt Lake Community College to go to school? Is basically what that is. I'm going to hit Q. Sorry, this seems like a shameless advertisement for Salt Lake Community College, but oh well. But here's the answer. Why did I attend Salt Lake Community College? I'm just going to go to the end of that, put an out point, extract that, and I'm going to make a new timeline based on my template, duplicate, and I'm going to name this one 02 why choose Salt Lake Community College. So I've got the second one there. Going to double click on that, Control V and paste. And in this one, I'm going to hit my slash key to show the entire timeline. I've got the interview answer there, why this person chose this college. So I'm going to continue doing this. Let's go to the next one, listen to this question.
So just your general kind of overall feel about the film department.
What is your general feel about what do you think of the film department? So I'm going to hit Q to get rid of the question, go to the end, I can see where the waveform stops, and I'm going to hit O for out point and extract. And I'm going to continue doing this through all my interviews till I'm going to have several. Let's go to template, duplicate this one, and I'm going to call this O3. What do you think of the film department? What do you think of the film department? I'm going to double click on that one and paste it in there. So I'm going to continue doing this through all this guy's interviews here until I get all these categories divided up onto different timelines here and start putting them in there. I'm going to do that throughout this whole interview with this one person, then I'm going to come back when I hit the next person here and show you the next step. Okay, so I've gone through that first interview and I've got now 7 different categories of questions that were answered. So now I'm going to go to the next interview, and this is what you do. After I'm done with the first interview, I'm going to go through the next one, and right here is the answering of the name, so I can kind of skip past that part, and I'm going to listen to the question right here.
Career path you're thinking about.
So what career path? So we've already asked that question right there. So this one is a new interview, different person, but same question. So I'm going to hit Q and eliminate all this beforehand, and I'm going to go to the end of that question.
Just that kind of stuff.
There we go. That's the end of his answer for what career. I'm going to hit O for out point, extract it, and I'm going to go to what career after graduation. At the very end of this one student's already answered that question, but now I hit Control V, and now 2 students have answered that same question. And then I go back to the interview and listen to the questions. If there are new questions that have been asked this person, I'm going to create new timelines. But if the timeline has already been created to answer this question, I'm going to add every time a new person answers that same question into those same timelines. So I'll have timelines with like 3 or 4 different people saying different answers about the same question, or I should say their version of their answer for that question.
So why did you come to Salt Lake Community College?
So right there, why did you come to Salt Lake Community College? Once again, that's already been answered right there, but now it's a new student. So I'm going to go to the end of this one. I can see where it ends right there. O for out point, extract it, and I'm going to go to this timeline. I'm already at the end of this timeline. Control V and paste it. Hit slash to show the entire timeline. I have 2 answers there, and I'm going to continue doing this. Like I said, if we ask a different question, somebody has a different kind of different take on something, I might make a different timeline. But this is the way you organize it. I'm going to go through all the interviews, put them into subject category timelines, their own subject category timelines. I'd like to number them just to keep them organized, and sometimes I might renumber these depending on how I want to tell the story when I'm finished. So I'm going to go through, get all these answers out of all these students. I think I've got 4 different students here, and then plus the instructor comments, and I'm going to get these all organized into different timelines. And once that's all done and I've gone through this whole interview timeline, this will be blank. There'll be nothing left, but all these will have everything will be categorized into different categories with the compilation of interviews, and I will show you the next step after this. Okay, now I'm back, and I have gone through and now notice my interview timeline is empty. Now I can actually go through and delete that if I want to. I can select that interview timeline and hit delete because I don't need it anymore, because all my interviews have been cut down and divided into all these different timelines. And you'll notice I have a couple new subjects. Have the professors ever screamed at you? And one about the screening room. So all these, if I go to each one of these, you'll notice each one has several interviews answering kind of the same question, but in their own unique way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my template here, and I'm going to change this one to my final edit. This is where my final edit is going to rest. I double click on it, it's blank, and now I can go and grab all these different categories here and start putting them into my final edit. Now I can decide how I want to tell this story here. Which one do I want? And this kind of goes in a kind of a natural organic order here, and it might work well, but you can kind of rearrange. See, maybe the soundstage and the screening room, those 2 things can go together before we start talking about the equipment. So you can start organizing these however you want. I'm going to go, what career do you want after graduation? Nice little icebreaker. So I'm going to double click on that timeline, hit Control A, Control C, go to my final edit, Control V. I've pasted all the ones in there from the first question. Go to timeline 2. Is this a good one here? That is a good one there. So why did you choose Salt Lake Community College? Control A or Command A? On a Mac, it's Command A, Command C, Command V. So Command A, Command C. Go to my interview or to my final edit, Command V. So now I've got 2 questions answered in here. So now I'm just organizing these things. Number 3, Control A, Control C. Go to my interview. Go to my final edit, Control V. I'm going to keep doing this here and getting them in the order I want. Benefits of going here instead of other programs. Control A, Control C. Go to my interview timeline, my final timeline, Control V. Now see, this is where I want to switch this up a little bit. I'm going to get my soundstage stuff, Control A, Control C. Go to my final timeline, Control V. And now I'm going to go to, instead, I want to go to my number 9 here. Grab this one. It's just one answer here. Control C, copy it because that's kind of in the same category, talking about the rooms that are used. Go to my final edit and paste in number 9. So I got to remember, and you might want to take notes or either put asterisk or something on these timelines so you remember which ones you've used. This is pretty simple. I remember the only one I haven't. I went from soundstage to screening room, and I need these 3, so I'm going to grab these 3 now. Control A, Control C. My final edit, Control V. Go to number 7. Same process. Back to my final edit, paste that in, and one final. Have the professors ever screamed at you? Good way to finish. Control A, Control C, go to my final edit, and make sure I'm at the end. Control V. Okay, hit my slash, and here is my entire spine basically for my industrial video or my commercial here. Now we're down to 10 minutes as opposed to like that 20, whatever, the 25, 26 minutes that we had. I'm going to basically close all my other timelines here. I'm going to select this one, hit Control W. On a Mac, it's Command W, Control W, Command W, and keep hitting Control W, close all these, and then I'm going to open up my final edit. That's the only thing I don't even need these categories anymore. In fact, I can grab these and drag them into a folder and just call this folder categories or something like that. So I've got all those in the categories. Here's my final edit. I've got everything all organized in here. And now it's simply a task of going through and cutting. I showed this in how to do it, the single interview timeline. Go through and try to cut this down. In this video, we wanted it to be like 3 or 4 minutes, so we're going to have to cut down the redundancies. Try to string together sentences so people don't say the exact same thing, but kind of say their own unique items. Building on one from the other, you can rearrange them if you want to. Let's give some examples here. So I'm going to start playing through this, and also you can get a little bit aggressive here and start cutting out ums and ahs and pauses. So let's play through this. There's a big Q to eliminate that beforehand.
When I first started, I thought I wanted to do like strictly documentary journalism type stuff, and then I started getting into the camera department. I've always been a techie guy and into tech stuff, so the camera really interested me.
Right there, that's good enough. I'm gonna keep these kind of short, so I'm gonna cut off the rest of what he's saying there. Let's listen to it just to make sure.
I think I want to do cinematography.
There we go. So I'm just gonna cut that off right there. W to eliminate the rest of the right. Let's listen to the next interview.
Well, the career path that I was thinking.
And this guy actually says the career path that I wanted to do, and the previous guy doesn't. So this one might actually be a better starting for the subject than the previous clip. So let's cut this down here.
Well,
I'm going to cut off the and well Q. Play through it.
the career path that I was thinking about taking. I originally wanted to be a stripper. You know, get a little bit ripped, get some money on the side, but that kind of fell through. So I'm thinking about going into like production, maybe working more with sound, assistant directing, script supervising.
There we go. So yeah, that's interesting. So I'm going to grab this clip right here because he has a better kind of lead into this question than this guy does. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to swap it with this clip right here. And the way you swap is you hold Control, Alt, Command Option on a Mac and drag the clip over. If you just grab a clip and drag it over it, then hold Control, it'll just shove it out and place it before a clip, but it leaves this big gap here. If you want to swap a clip, Control Option or Control Alt on a PC, Command Option on a Mac, drag this to the left, let go, and it just swapped those 2 clips. So let's play through this.
The career path that I was thinking about taking, I originally.
And now I can go to the next section here.
Film production. One thing I came in here just thinking pure, narrative film production, and I've been really loving the documentary side of things.
Okay, I can eliminate a big portion of what this guy says beforehand and just shorten it to
Loving the document. I've been really
loving the documentary parts of things here.
and I've been
So let's get,
narrative film production, and
I'm going to cut off the and just have him start with, I hit Q there.
I've been really loving the documentary side of things, the journalism side of things, but I think he'll eventually end up with narrative film production.
So all these career paths, people talking about their career paths, and I'm going to continue doing this, cutting down, cutting out. If somebody says the exact same thing, I don't want that in there. Don't want those redundancies in there, and I'm going to trim this down until I get down to like a 3 or 4 minute timeline from 10 minutes. Already I've shaved off about 8 seconds, so I'm going to continue doing this, getting everything organized so it tells a story from beginning to end, and then we will go on to the next part. So let me do that. I will be back after I've got this all trimmed down. Alright, I haven't finished this yet, but I do want to point out one other thing here. Here's a good example of kind of redundancy that I'm going to cut out. This guy says,
I chose Salt Lake Community College because I heard that their program was more advanced and more hands-on than any of the other schools around.
so he says, I went to Salt Lake Community College because. So this guy kind of says it starts off the same way.
I came to Salt Lake Community College because
Okay, so I can just cut off this whole section right here where he says the same thing this previous guy said, but just start off with him saying,
I heard the film program.
I heard the film program. So let's see if we can kind of blend that in
Because I heard.
Right there is where he says I, so I'm going to hit Q. Now he says,
I heard the film program was really good, and I wanted to get a lot of hands-on experience with the equipment.
and this guy says hands-on.
More advanced and more hands-on.
And this guy kind of says the same thing, but he kind of builds on top of what the previous guy said. Now we could decide, do we want to eliminate this completely, or do we want them to build on it? And that's depending on if you're trying to shorten it or get it down to a shorter length. That is one way you can make a decision there and see how it works.
I heard the film program was really good, and I wanted to get a lot of hands-on experience with the equipment. A lot of other schools, it's just a lot of lectures, and the hands-on stuff really helps you learn more.
Okay, and that's a good little portion that he builds on. So actually, I'm going to eliminate this whole section right here and hit Q, because this guy ends with,
Any of the other schools hands-on than advanced and more hands-on than any of the other schools around.
so he says it's more hands-on than any of the other schools around. Then this guy says, so now this just kind of builds on it. It's not as redundant as much as building onto it.
A lot of other schools, it's just a lot of lectures, and the hands-on stuff really helps you learn more, I feel like.
Okay, so I can take off
More.
and cut off the little end section of that. Here's one example where we built onto what one guy says. It kind of builds onto it and doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it builds onto it. So I wanted to bring that up as well. So I'm going to edit the rest of this, get it edited down, then we'll come back for the last portion here. Okay, now I've got this all edited down. I've got it down to about 3 minutes from about initially 25 minutes of interview footage, and then 10 minutes cut down, and then down to 3 minutes for my kind of final timeline here. And I've gone through this in the previous episode, or I've gone through this earlier in this episode where I talked about going through and cutting out the ums and ahs. Just quick refresher. So we play through this. There are some pauses. There's some other things we can cut out and get this down even a little bit more. Let's kind of play through this.
The career path that I was thinking about taking,
Like the right there. And we're going to use BRoll to kind of edit over this stuff. I'm going to hit a I for an endpoint. Play. Stop. Arrow back a couple frames right there before he speaks. O for out point. And then I will hit the extract key and take that out. So the is taken out.
I originally wanted to be a stripper.
And I'm going to cut that. Play. Where it says, I can probably take that out as well. I might want to cut back to him from the B-roll to this section and show him while he's talking about being a stripper.
Get a little bit ripped, get some money on the side, but that kind of fell through. So I'm thinking about going into production.
Oh wait, I'm going to take because now he's just talking about production. I've got B-roll for that.
Thinking about going into
take out this here, take out that O, extract.
Production. maybe working more with sound, assistant directing, script supervising.
When I first started, I thought I wanted
Okay, and I'm going to do this throughout the whole process. I'm going to do this throughout the whole interview. All these interviews. I'm going to take out the pauses. I'm going to take out the ums, the ahs, the redundancies again, and get a little bit more aggressive as far as taking everything out. And I showed also the process of doing a crossfade between some of the edits to smooth things out. So same concepts apply here to get this edited down to a final interview timeline. And once I'm done with that, then I can start editing B-roll. We showed you how the B-roll process goes. I've got some B-roll here. I'm going to go look at some of these videos here, and I've got some video film productions here. I can just do in point,
Where's the arm?
out point, and same sort of process. This has some nice audio on the camera footage, so I can actually add that in here as well. I've got my source patching down here. I'm going to make sure my source patching is on video track 1 audio or video track 2 audio track 2. So when I hit right now, I'm going to do with this footage comma and force that over, and now I can kind of overlay this to the end of this edit right there, because there's a little bit of audio here. So watch this. One little trick I want to show here is we got some audio from the B-roll.
Get something set up right. Where's the arm?
Right there, we've got a little bit of audio of people talking, and now I'm going to mix this and turn it down before the interview starts. Even though right here this guy starts talking and the B-roll is covering his first portion of the clip, we're going to hear him start talking as this audio turns down, and we're just kind of listening to this kind of quiet under this interview footage. Let's listen to that, and actually let's do a dissolve in too. I'm going to do Control D, fade in, Control Shift D, and add a fade in on the audio. Control D added the cross dissolve. Control Shift D added the crossfade.
Get something set up right. Where's the arm?
The career path that I was thinking about taking, I originally wanted
There we go, and that works. Then it cuts back to him.
to be a stripper, you know, get a little bit. I was thinking about going into like.
Okay, but now with the edit here, we want to hide this edit. So after he speaks here, we're going to leave him on camera, do a lower third later on. I'm going to add more B-roll when he starts talking here to hide that edit. So I'm going to double click, and now we go back to 3-point editing. I'm going to scroll through this, find the footage that's relevant to what he's saying. This is good enough. I'm going to leave this out point open-ended. There's 1 point. Hit Shift 3 to go to my timeline. In point. Let's say I want this clip to last all the way to this out point. I'm going to arrow down, out point. There's 3 points. 1, 2, 3, same concept as we showed before with a single interview edit, and period to drop it in. And of course the audio is added in there, so I'm going to turn this audio down because we want it kind of playing underneath. So now when we play through this, it will cut to this video with a kind of quiet audio playing underneath it, and then cut back to this new video over here. Let's play through it.
So I'm thinking about going into like production, maybe working more with sound, assistant directing, script supervising.
when I first started, I thought I wanted
And I'm going to overlap this just a little bit.
Script supervising.
when I first started, I thought I wanted to do like
Right there, the guy yells action. So what we could do, watch this little trick, and then we'll be finished. I'm going to hit A for my all tracks forward. Grab this, move it forward a little ways, because I want this kind of left in where he yells action, and then have this guy here. So now I'm going to hit all tracks forward, grab these, bring them back, overlap this a little bit. And I'm gonna, when this guy gets through talking, I'm going to mix this for another little sound bite there, and then turn it down. So I've got 4 points there, a pivot point here, a pivot point here, and I'm going to turn up this middle section. So now watch this.
Sound, assistant directing, script supervising.
And action.
when I first started, I thought I wanted to do like strictly
Nice little sound bridge there. This sounds a little abrupt when it quits, so I'm going to hold down Control Shift D, Command Shift D on a Mac, and that audio will fade out as it cuts to the next shot.
I thought I wanted to do like strictly documentary.
And that looks pretty good. Let's just watch a little bit of this here, and we're just going to keep adding the B-roll as it works. Just kind of feel your way through it.
Get something set up right. Where's the arm?
The career path that I was thinking about taking, I originally wanted to be a stripper, you know, get a little bit ripped, get some money on the side, but, you know, that kind of fell through. So I'm thinking about going into like production, maybe working more with sound, assistant directing, script supervising.
And action.
when I first started, I thought I wanted to do.
And this is kind of a long shot right here. Leaves it on this one set shot. I'd probably cut a couple of those shots in there a little bit. Maybe when this guy gets through talking, show a slight clap and then cut back to this wide shot and get a little bit creative with some flashier editing than just these kind of long clips here. Anyway, those are some recommendations, kind of the same suggestions with the single interview edit, adding your B-roll. You got to go through. I've noticed a lot of the audio is kind of peaking and some of it's quiet, so you're going to have to go through and mix this, add music, same process, color correction and everything else to finish this up. But this is the process for getting a multi-interview commercial or industrial or documentary segment finished here, that it really helps you get organized and really helps things, facilitates getting the important clips down in there and getting them in an order that it tells a story in a very specific way and gets your point across. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post it. Thanks for watching.